Please remember to like, share, subscribe, and comment, and I hope you enjoy the interview.
Good afternoon, Greg Mckenzie. Thank you so much for coming onto my platform. You are one of the most trusted journalists at the BBC, and you're well known for many of the stories that you've covered, including the issues with regards to Chris Kaba's untimely death. You've interviewed some of the biggest stars in the world, including Lady Gaga.
Yeah.
You've met the likes of Steve McQueen, even covered stories to do with the Euros when England's very successful campaign, and many other well-known stories. So thank you so much for coming on.
Well, my pleasure, Micah.
Thank you. The first question I'd like to ask you is, please tell us about your early life growing up, and particularly why you decided to become a journalist.
Well, I grew up in southwest London on an estate in Roehampton. It was quite rough. It was quite ready, but we grew up there. We were, that's where I grew up. It's where I'm from. And I guess there was always stuff happening. Someone's house was always getting raided, or someone was always getting arrested, or it was many of us, not many had many aspirations, just because there was nothing to do. There was nothing there. So we were always getting up to mischief and doing, just crazy things as kids do. We were kids. So I had that mentality of wanting to get out of there. And storytelling was a good way, because I was always good at telling stories. So, we'd go on school trips on the coach and I'd just tell stories of this one, that one. I was a bit of a gossip too. So journalism just fit right in. And I knew from an early age, that's what I wanted to do. So at 15, I knew I wanted to be a journalist. But I didn't quite understand what a journalist was or what they do, but I knew they wrote stories. So that's what I kind of started focusing on at 16, 17, to kind of go into journalism and study media to understand what goes into media. So I did a course at City Westminster College, which was a foundation GNVQ 2-year course in media, and it taught me the basics of radio, TV, and digital platforms production. And then you chose from that moment on to go on and study that element further. Mine was always broadcast journalism, but I ended up working at a newspaper, which was tough because I'm dyslexic. So writing copy every day was a lot. It was a lot of work.
Thank you so much for that. And you actually presented many BBC Panorama documentaries. The first one I'd like to just talk about is Legal Weapon. Now, that was very hard hitting. If anyone hasn't seen it, they totally need to watch it. But you talked about the different loopholes in the UK when it came to gun laws. What do you think needs to happen in the UK, whether it be from a political perspective, social perspective, to deal with the UK's gun crime epidemic?
Well, yeah, that Panorama on called Legal Weapon was my first film for Panorama. And we spent about 4 months working on that. And as the presenter, you're involved quite heavily in the research, the question, the interviews. So you don't just turn up and present, you're kind of involved. So what was established quite early was there was a loophole in the law, and a lot of these guns that were getting into the country legally were then being kind of jacked up and transformed into killer weapons, because the bullets, basically a gun that's 100 years old and further at 100 years, it is classed as an antique weapon. So you're legally allowed to have them as ornaments, but you're not allowed to source the bullets for those guns, because those bullets are discontinued. They're not made anymore. And that's part and parcel of that law, of the fact they're discontinued. So this guy was bringing them in from America, and then he was literally making the bullets in his back garden. And his bullets were linked to 100 murders across the West Midlands and the UK. And that was basically the story that we uncovered. And the law still ain't been changed, but it was out there and the gun lobbyists didn't like it. because they're thinking it was going to be reformed, and people apparently like to shoot their guns legally, but they were ending up in the wrong hands of the wrong people. But as that story went out, and the man involved, the lead character, the lead case study within that film, he got 30 years in jail. He'd already been jailed before we did the film, and literally within 2 weeks, there's another person that's replaced him making these bullets for these antique weapons. So there's always someone there waiting to take the place of that other person. But what they were doing was highly illegal. They were creating bullets, making bullets. So in terms of changing the laws, it's a tough one, because the laws in place, you can have these antique weapons as long as you don't then source the bullets, and it's the sourcing of the bullets which is the illegal activity.
Thank you so much. And when you're filming these documentaries, do you ever fear for your safety? Because like with Ross Kemp, when he puts himself in dangerous situations to try and expose the different inequalities and injustices in society, has there ever been times that you feared for your safety?
Yeah, a couple of times. I'm chewing gum. I feel like I'm in school now, Micah. I've got to spit this out. I don't even think of the word, but right, it's gone. Safety is always, I've had death threats. I've had people troll me on social media. I've had, but again, you just refer it to the team at the BBC, and there's quite a strict protocol in place for when that kind of thing happens, and the police get involved, and the individual or the individuals are contacted by the police and asked to back off. It's illegal. You're threatening someone's life. You go to jail for that. And all I'm doing is a journalist trying to tell a story. So, I do I worry, but it's something that comes with the job, but you just have to be mindful. So, after that film, I was cautious. I was getting random emails. I was getting people ringing me. Someone gave my number out, and I was getting mad calls, and then it died down after a couple of weeks, because the police did get involved. So I was lucky in that respect.
Thank you so much for that, Greg. And following on from that, you also presented another BBC Panorama documentary called Conned by My Church, which covered SPAC Nation.
Yeah,
Now,
that was... Oh, sorry, go on, Mike. Look, go on, what's the question?
So what are your thoughts on SPAC Nation, Pastor Toby, and are you surprised the church was shut down?
Now, that film we spent nearly a year working on that. And those young people that came forward to tell their stories, I commend them, because without them, the film wouldn't have made to where it got to. A lot of people were trying to do films on SPAC Nation, and a lot of the young people were embarrassed. They were ashamed at being conned. And ultimately, the people we got, I spent weeks with them, talking to them, and we put that film out, and the church disbanded. SPAC Nation is still out there. It's just not as big, or that name is not being used as SPAC. They've just kind of reformed. But what happened with the back of that film was the Charity Commission got involved, and basically there's an investigation. To this day, I don't know what ever happened, because that was 2 years ago now. Sad, it was a sad story, and one that really felt needed to be told properly and in depth. We went in depth with that, and it was so complex. The fraudulent activities that they were being accused of doing, that wasn't easy to just explain. It was very clever what was alleged to be happening. You have to be careful now, because legally it's still fraud, So it was a shame, it was a real shame that these young people felt exploited and traumatized. Their lives have been changed forever. And they're young, 18, 19, being forced to take out loans, fake bank loans, that companies that didn't exist. And now this 19-year-old's got a £10,000 debt, and they're knocking the mum's door to bailiffs to take her stuff for him. At 19, you just think, really? Wow. It was just, it was a crazy, crazy time. And ultimately, a lot of them young people did get help. They got help.
Thank you so much for that. And on a bit of a more happier note, you've actually interviewed some of the biggest stars across the world, talking about Lady Gaga, Steve McQueen, and so many others. You have such an impressive portfolio.
Micah, I used to do entertainment news at Radio 1, and I was an entertainment journalist. So I met loads of people. And, I always felt that in journalism, they're never your friend. So when you're interviewing someone, I had to ask really dodgy questions, tough questions. So people might think, oh, he's rolling with Rihanna, or he's rolling with Jay-Z. Oh, look at him with Kanye. But I was always there to do a job. Yeah, it was great. Of course it was, to meet these artists and entertainers. But ultimately, there's a job to do. And with someone like Kanye, back then, we're talking, 6, 7, 8 years ago, he was still top of his game. And, I asked him, some people think you're arrogant, and he didn't like it. Pharell, I interviewed him at his shop in Carnaby Street, and he was giving me yes, no answers. So I had to stop the interview, take him aside and say, hey, I'm getting you on the BBC here. I've had to bend over backwards to get you on to talk about your clothing label, which really was a bit of an advert for him. And BBC don't do that. So I said, you need to come with some decent answers, like stop messing about, take your sunglasses off and interact with me. And he shook my hand. He said, brother, I respect you. And then we did become friends in a weird old way. But after the interview, not before. But so, yeah, I always, because I was a music fan. I've always been a music fan. So, but there's a thin line. I can't bear interviews where an interviewer is gushing over the artist. And there's a few people that do that. And it's awful. So for me, Jay-Z, I needed to know about Glastonbury. I needed to know about his wife. I needed to know about his music, his business. And so it was never, I love your favorite track. It was not that type of I'm a bit more harder line journalist than that. So yeah, I've had an amazing time. I've met lots of artists, and I think the highlights was Rihanna. That was amazing because I was scared to get a picture. Now, because I'm kind of, you kind of think, oh, it's not professional if I want a picture with them. But I'm like, I'm never going to get there again. I want a picture with you. And she just grabbed me and literally yanked me into her side. So I'm like this, and then it's a really weird story, Micah. She had red hair back then, and so the hair's gone into my face, right? So when she's got off, literally, I was she was on my lap, and I had 3 strands of her red hair on my face, and I don't even know if I should say this, but I sellotaped it to my fridge. So when people come around, I'm like, I've got Riri's hair in my house. That's really weird, but of course I've never told her, but I'm sure if I did, she'd probably block me on social media because it is a bit strange. But who can say they've got Riri's hair on their fridge, right?
I don't envy you at all. I mean,
I've never told anyone that. Well, obviously people know because it's on the fridge, but yeah, it's not a good look.
Thank you so much. And what advice would you give to young people that want to follow you, because in terms of journalism?
Micah, the advice I'd give is keep going, pursue it, persistence. When I got my first job at the BBC, I'd emailed the editor every week. I'd email him. Any jobs now? Any jobs? And nowadays it's about ideas and access to people. So, you're only as good as your last idea, and ideas in journalism is currency, because if you're going to message someone at, like a TV channel or a newspaper, it's good if you go in with, yes, I think I'm good enough to do this. I am good enough to do this. I've been at university, I've studied, but I've done work experience. I've worked at this newspaper. I've got a few ideas I think you'd be interested in, and just give 2 ideas, 2 solid ones that you think that newspaper or that TV company should be doing. And it just stands you out from everyone else because they're inundated with people wanting to do journalism. So my advice is to keep persistent and listen to the output before. So if you're thinking of going to Newsbeat at Radio 1, listen to the program, listen to what they do, what works, what don't you like? Because the editor will ask you, the first thing they'll ask you when you get into that meeting, what did you think of the program? What did you think of last night's show? And you've got to be on it with, oh, I was listening. I listened to last week and it was this, this, and this. And then you just come with ideas, and sometimes it's people Like I go barbershop every week and there's like stories in there. They know me now as the newsman. So whenever I go in, it's like, oh, my, this story happened, this happened, my son was murdered. I've got contacts through the barbershop that no one else is going to get at the BBC, because people ain't doing that grassroots kind of searching for stories. Obviously they do, but it's just knowing your community, and sometimes the best stories are people that you know and are right next to you. Do you know what I mean?
That's supposed to be helping young people. It's encouraging young people to go and open business accounts or businesses they don't have so that they can share the money.
I went to meet the man asking questions about the church. Vic Santoro is an ex-offender himself. Now he's a musician and actor. Vic told me his 20-year-old brother joined SPAC Nation earlier this year. As a budding football coach, his pastor offered him a tempting proposition.
My mum phoned me.
Yeah.
I was like, your brother started up a business.
Really?
And she was really excited about it. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of him. He told me, no, these people in the church approached me and said X, Y, Z, they can help me start a coaching thing.
The pastor registered a company in Vic's brother's name and opened a business account for him with HSBC.
When I was asking about the application process, he said, no, I never filled in an application. I just gave them my details and they did it. So straight away, I'm just thinking, that's not a church's responsibility to be doing that.
The business account had an overdraft facility. How much was that?
£2,000 overdraft.
£2,000.
Yeah.
What happens to that money?
So they basically take him to the bank. He withdraws £1,400, give it to them, because they said it was part of consultation fee / helping him set this business up.
But there was no business and no money in the account. In the end, Vic's brother was left £2,000 in debt to the bank.
Yeah.
Why do you think he fell for this?
There's an element of him not doing research or being diligent enough. However, in ethnic minority communities, a lot of families, like God, like faith in general, it's like a beacon of hope for most families. In his head, there's no reason why they would be trying to trick him into anything or trying to do, anything that can get him in potential trouble. So he would obviously take their word for it. Why would you use God's name to trick me?
Those of you called to make money is a call. Don't give up on it. Don't let the world teach you false humility. So
SPAC Nation encourages worshippers to donate money to the church. It says the more they give, the more wealth and success they get back. They call it sowing seed.
Fear nothing.
Toby Adeboyega even suggests how much seed members should donate every month.
A basic person in a month should give £1,000. I think that's normal. I think it's no big deal. It's not even that deep.
Panorama has now spoken to many young people who say they felt under intense pressure to give.
I know people personally that have given £1,000 a week. You don't ever question how you get the money. You just get the money and give.
We never openly admitted to each other about the struggles that we had in terms of giving. All we knew is that there was a vision that Pastor Toby has set for each member to also have in their minds and in their hearts about the church, and then we were all supposed to just contribute regardless.
When you are the biggest giver, it's noted. You will be endorsed, you will be called on stage, you will be shown love, and you'll be treated differently.
God has been good to you. Hallelujah.
The man everyone wants to please, Toby Adeboyega.
He's a charming guy and very intelligent with his wordplays and with the way he preaches. Through that psychological mind play, you want to do what Pastor Toby asks you to do. And in SPAC Nation, you don't ever disobey your leaders.
The church says it has 5 community units in London. They're run by Toby Adeboyega's most senior pastors. Called the Generals, they lead his recruitment and fundraising.
The Generals are the people that are very close to Pastor Toby, the people that you bow down to and say, hello sir, hello ma. So the first in line would be Pastor Sam.
Well, it's not about the politicians, it's about the system.
Samuel Akokia, or Pastor Sam as he's known, has a conviction for attempted robbery. He credits Toby Adeboyega with turning his life around.
So without further ado, what I want to do now is I want to bring to the stage our father, our mentor, Pastor Toby Adeboyega.
Akokia uses social media to spread the word about the fundraising targets of his leader, PT.
2-3 days ago, God began to remind me about the testimony of PT regarding giving.
And he began to show me that it is not too small for individuals to give 1K a week.
Akokia runs what SPAC Nation calls a trap house. TRAP stands for Take Risks and Prosper. The church says it encourages pastors to open their homes to members with housing problems. But for some, it was the start of a journey into debt as the church began to look for new ways to get money.
Thank you so much for that, Greg. And even following on from that, the community and the social aspects of it. One of the stories that you covered that got publicized all over the UK was the murder of Chris Kaba, or the death of Chris Kaba, as some would say. What are your thoughts on his death and the current state of policing?
Well, that's ongoing, that case. So the shooting, and as a journalist to cover it's something that I had to do and wanted to do and cover. And I noticed that a lot of newspapers and tabloid media were going down the line of, he was in a gang, or he was a drill music artist, he was, he'd been in prison. That doesn't justify the police shooting someone dead. Whether that's not the story. The story is, why was he shot at, and why did he die? Why did the police fire that gun? Now, all of those details will come out in time, and the family have every right to want justice. But I find what sometimes the UK press and media will jump on, almost trying to discredit his murder by trying to make it acceptable that it's okay to do that. That could have been you. That could have been me in that car. Like, it really could have been any one of us as young black men. So it can't happen. It's coming like America. It really is for black people here. And it's scary. So as a journalist, I have to make sure that the Met Police are held accountable and that we are telling the stories of the community. Because if the family weren't so, I guess if the family had kind of gone away quietly and just left the investigation to the investigation and not do any interviews, I don't know where we would be right now. The family called for a homicide investigation immediately, when he was shot dead. It didn't happen for 7 days. Had they not done an interview with me on the BBC and publicized the case, maybe that homicide investigation wouldn't have been given. Maybe it would have just been a general investigation. We don't know. But in time, that's going to be a long process for the family, 6 to 9 months for that investigation to come back from the Independent Police Complaints Commission. And only then will it be decided whether there's enough evidence to go to court to prosecute the officer who has been suspended. So it's a long form. It's basically a long process for the family. And I'll stick with them and cover this story of all the kind of the timeline of the story, the key moments of the story. And I'm sure you'll be seeing a lot more once it's complete and the investigation's over.
And it's actually testament to just how good of a journalist that you are. I've been watching many of your interviews and the way how you do it. Not just interviewing for the sake of telling a story, but with empathy.
Yeah. And that's key, Micah, because they're human. At the end of the day, they're human. And, I think I always turn up at a scene. It's awful. I've covered probably over 100 murders now in London in the last 3 years. Yeah. And I'm often used to be first there at 4 a.m, 5 a.m, when I used to start my shift at BBC Radio London. But the Chris Kaba murder, when I saw the family, the first thing I said was, how are you? How are you? I'm really sorry that this has happened. Yeah. What happened? Tell me what happened. And a lot of people won't do that. They say, a lot of people don't get it. The community, and I come from, it's I think, and one of only a few black journalists as well. There was only a handful of us at that scene. We count all of them on at one hand. And we get it. We know what the community is going. We know that community. It's our community. So I think the members of the public feel a connection. You look like them, so therefore it's easier to talk to us. about these issues that are happening within the Black community. And some, will go down the road of trying to ask, negative questions, which I have to ask. Of course, I've got to ask. I knew about his background. I knew about that. I did my research. Of course, I have to ask about it. And I did. And I got my answers. And my pieces were balanced. I mentioned various things about his past, but in a factual, correct way. I didn't second guess it, and as for the, it's just, and then talking to the family, when the camera's off and everyone's gone home, I was still talking to the family up until that night, 1 in the morning, texting, phone calls the next day, not wanting anything, just wanting to follow the developments. And I was grateful that they granted me the only interview with the mum and dad, Prosper and Helen, Kaba, literally 48 hours after the murder of their son.
Correspondent Greg Mckenzie has more details.
A family still coming to terms with the killing of their son, 23-year-old Chris Kaba, who died following a police chase on Monday night. Officers say they used a tactic where they deliberately collided with the Audi he was driving to make him stop, and then Chris was shot.
Really, we are shocked to see that in this century, from specialists of the law like police can shortcut someone's life, especially a young boy.
There are tensions in the Black community in South London, all demanding answers. Chris Kaba was due to become a father within months. He was well known locally by his rap artist name Maddox.
My heart is broken. I was speechless. My heart is broken. Police is taking Chris from me. I don't know how to say, but I need justice to be done. The justice to be done for Chris. This is very racist. It's not good.
The Metropolitan Police has expressed its condolence to the family, but says it won't be commenting any further as the shooting is being investigated by the independent police watchdog, the IOPC.
Where are you, my son? Where are you, my...
But the family say they want answers and are accusing the Metropolitan Police of racism. They want more details as to the circumstances behind the killing of their much-loved son, who they claim was unarmed. Greg Mckenzie, BBC News.
Thank you so much. And also a very talented actor.
Do you know what, Micah? You have to do it all. I always wanted to be an actor first before a journalist. Yeah. But I live in a reality where it's tough. It's tough for Black actors. And I needed a full-time kind of proper job, if that makes sense. So journalism was the nearest thing to TV presenting, because I always wanted to be a TV presenter. And again, they're very rare opportunities of full-time presenting jobs. So journalism is second best for me. It's still telling a story. Acting, listen, if I got a job tomorrow to go to Hollywood or be in, a Black Panther, it'd be a dream. But I'm getting there slowly. I'm getting parts. The parts are getting bigger. And I'm doing big programs. I'm auditioning for quite a few, one or two big, massive, I'm not even allowed to say what they are. That's how it is. They make you sign to all sorts. But if you like action-packed kind of, it's kind of, we'll see. But I would always do journalism. So I haven't got to that bridge yet. I don't know what that would look like if I got a job and I had to go to America for 6 months. I think I'd really have to think about it. Of course I'm going to go. Of course I would. But it would be a tough decision. And in life now, you can do everything remotely anyway. So I wouldn't be too far away.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually. And I think that because you're so good at it, I'm quite sure the opportunity will come sooner or later.
One day. Cool. But even if it don't, I've done it. I've ticked the list. I've done Homeland. I've done a HBO series. I've been in a series, J.K. Rowling. I've done the big films, and it was nice because I always wanted that as a teenager, and I never quite got there. So to get it in later life, it's like, oh, this is what it feels like, you know, to be in a trailer, to have an assistant, to be on set, to have to run lines, to do read-throughs with all the other actors. So I always get imposter syndrome as well, because I'm like, oh wow, they're like, I never really trained as a professional actor. I happened to just get the credits to make me professional. I studied it at college, drama, but I didn't go to a drama school because I focused on journalism. But I always did want to go to acting school. So yeah, it's kind of, yeah, you have to do it all. I shoot, direct, I produce, I write. You kind of got to upskill sometimes, especially the way it's going now. Everyone can do everything. You know, every news reporter can shoot, every news reporter can edit. Like the old kind of, I don't want to be offensive, but kind of the kind of old school lot wouldn't do that. But the new generation, it's all digital, social media. It's all, they can film on iPhones, they can edit their pieces together on iMovie and just get it out straight away. And that's the new generation of journalists has to be multi-skilled in that respect to have every discipline, which is great, I guess. A lot of work, but it's great.
And thank you so much. And another inspirational thing about you is that you, throughout your childhood, and struggled with dyslexia, yet you have become a very successful journalist. Other people that I can think of that have also struggled with dyslexia or successful is Matt Hancock. Not saying that an opinion on that. I'm just saying.
Well, Micah, do you know what? When he mentioned that in the jungle, that he had dyslexia, do you know, I resonated with that, because I did not know that someone in government that high profile would say it, because dyslexia for a long time, a lot of us were told we were stupid. A lot of us were told we were dumb, we were lazy. Yeah. And it's not, our brain just function differently. I can't spell. I really struggle with spelling. So, you know, even your name, like when I saw it, like when last week, a couple of weeks ago, I was like, Michael, Micah, Micah. And I knew it. Once I hear it, I can associate the word. But the way it looked on paper, it just looked so, and I do journalism, the worst job possible if you're dyslexic, because it's all about grammar, spelling. But my work, a lot of it, especially online, is always triple checked. It's proofed. So I was lucky in that respect. But writing for other people, I'd struggle. So a lot of my work now, I write my own scripts. So I'm all right with it. And I can read. Like I did 5 Live, I presented on the radio. And that was tough because a lot of the scripts were being written whilst we were on air for 3 hours. So I knew the first hour was written, and part of my brain and processing with the dyslexia, I have to see it first before I can read it, just to understand the intonation. But I didn't get the chance to do that at 5 Live. And so I struggled a bit. You wouldn't have known, but that was tough for me. And it was tough. Yeah, it was hard. Because pronunciations is people love to complain about pronunciations, and people quick to, oh, he's got it wrong. And I think there was a tennis tournament at the time, that weekend I was on. Yeah, it was hard. Someone always taught me, Greg, if you don't know, just say it fast. So, you know, I can't even remember Elena Yankov or all these people, all these names of tennis players. I don't watch tennis. So I was like, I'm in trouble here. And I struggled, you know, and then Ukraine came up. There was a couple of places in Ukraine, the names of cities. Again, I'd heard them, but didn't remember them. So to pronounce them on paper, that was tough. And it still is. But I just have to work a bit harder and, you know, spend a bit more time. Even yesterday I was writing and I couldn't spell a word. A friend told me about Google. So you can say the word. I think something silly like noise, N-O-I-S-E. And noise, the way I was writing it, I couldn't spell it. So I just went to Google and noise, and it came up, and I was like, N-O-I-S-E. That does look right. That's right. I was right. But it just takes me a bit longer. It's frustrating, but, you know, it's getting better. There's tools out there for us. When someone says, oh, just use a spell checker, it's the worst thing someone can say. It's just like, do you not think I have already? Like, it's not that simple. And I got my dyslexia diagnosis late. I was 19. So I knew there was something wrong at school because I couldn't engage. I lose interest really quickly if I struggle mentally. So my brain's frazzled and now I want to leave the classroom. But they were like, oh, he's just lazy. He doesn't want to work. But it hurt my head trying to learn at school. So, you know, I look back now and think, wow. And now dyslexia is kind of being accepted more as a condition. It really is. So people like Matt Hancock, you know, coming out and saying that, you know, it's great, it's good, because maybe now people are, oh, it's not just a black condition, it's not just the young people from inner city estates condition, it's actually can affect working class and people alike.
I think it's incredible for people to see that representation from successful people such as yourself, because they know that they're not alone.
Yeah, exactly that. And, you know, it's on my Twitter. I'm dyslexia ambassador. I'm not with any charities, but I am an ambassador for dyslexia. I understand it because I live it and I have it. And there's nothing to be ashamed about either. You know, and it's funny because on Twitter, a couple of people comment straight away, oh, your grammar, you spelt there wrong. It's that THRE, yeah, anyway, there. And then there's THIRE. So it's just knowing which one for the grammatical. And someone would call you up on it. And then someone had a row on Twitter on my behalf the other day. And we've been trained at the BBC not to engage with kind of trolling and all of that, because it just goes, it doesn't end well. So I just disengage. I won't join in that conversation. I'll just let it continue and let everyone else have the conversation. And someone said, can't you read his bio? It says he's dyslexic. Do you know what I mean? It's really nice. And so I like that comment, obviously. But yeah, so again, it's something I think I'm working with. And it's every day I kind of have a list of words each week that I have to try and remember to spell. And I do that once a week as a mental thing. It's only 5 words a week, but, you know, it doesn't really help. I still forget.
Thank you so much. And the last question I'd like to ask you is about your business. So you recently left the BBC to launch your company Inside Out Clothing in partnership with LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Please tell us a story about this company and what you hope to achieve.
So the Inside Out company is the UK's first ever clothing brand created and designed by young ex-offenders. It's an idea I always had, because growing up, a lot of my friends did end up in jail. A lot of them, you know, they struggled, and you know, they didn't have the right tools, and they left prison with nothing, criminal records, and being black. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was tough for them, and it still is. You know, many of them have got kids now, but I always wanted to do something that was aspirational, a reform program that was fun, enjoyable to do. So I kind of just put it out there like this year, and I approached LinkedIn to help us sponsor it and fund it and give us some help, and they agreed. And I was like, wow. So I was doing that alongside my full-time job at the BBC. And, you know, I missed a few things. There was some things I could have done better. Certain things going on with a company that I wasn't across. And I decided, if I'm going to do this again and make it a success, I have to dedicate my working day to that project. So I left my staff job at the BBC, and a company, a black CEO actually, at a company called Jellyfish, saw the vision that I had and has invested in me. So we're running the project next year, February, with 16 new young people who've recently left the system, the prison system. They're people with lived experiences. And I've hired 2 guys that were on this year's project to work with me 3 days a week. So we're doing that. So I kind of, BBC, I'm still there, but I'm freelance. So I pick and choose the days I can do. So I've got a Monday off next week. If the BBC need me on Monday, I can work on Monday. So I'm still there, but I have left my staff position. I'm not staff anymore, and I can run my own business, which is incredible. It's so empowering. And I never ever dreamt in 100 years I'd be here a year ago, like where I am now. But there's a lot of work to do. I'm not for a second. There's a lot of work to do, but the vision's there. The interest is there. We're going to have a shop at Westfield White City. And we're going to have a shop on Oxford Street next year. So you guys have got to come and check us out. Our website is insideoutclothing.co.uk.
Definitely.
Oh, that was a right plug there. I didn't mean to.
No, it's a brilliant plug. Will we see you on Dragon's Den anytime soon?
It was a Dragon's Den moment, like when I met the investor, Rob, and it felt like a Dragon's Den moment because we had to negotiate. The program Dragon's Den used to be one of my favorite. I loved that program. Now I'm like, we're season 8 or 9 or 10, I think it is. So the people that go on inspire me as a business person, because I didn't really understand business, and I watched that program, so I took a lot away from it. So yeah, I would have gone on Dragon's Den, but I didn't need to in the end. I was lucky, one of the lucky ones.
Thank you so much, Greg, for such a brilliant interview, and I wish you all the very best with your business.
Oh, thank you. Apologies, I was a bit rushed. I would have put on a shirt. Like, I've got one of the hoodies on from this is one of the guys, they designed this. So
wow.
That represents freedom. So they screen printed this and by hand. So it's like, and look, one of the hats, I had to take this off because I would have been, look, this, they've got the hat too. So really this cool. Is one of theirs that they designed. And again, it was just these guys and girls, we're gonna have girls, young women next year, they just need an opportunity. Someone that can give the creativity that's coming from some of these young people. We was at a Young Offenders Institute a few weeks ago, and a group of lads we met and sat down with. Some had never drawn before, couldn't draw, didn't want to draw, but we helped them. We had rulers, we had big pads, we had pens. I can't draw anyway, so I just started messing about. And one of the guys created a print for a T-shirt that was just incredible. And it was simple, like, I can't even find it now, but it was really, it touched me because it said something like, I need to find it, Micah. I can't find it now. I'm trying to think where it is. Let's see, it's here. Oh, here it is. Look, he created this. I don't know if you can see it. It says,
don't go out wrong.
Go out wrong. And then he drew an RIP sign, bars, and it was basically his journey in terms of crime, prison, and ultimately it doesn't pay. He's 17 and he's now wanting to do design because he's been shown a potential opportunity. So these are the designs. Some of those will be made into hoodies, T-shirts, and the guys will work in the shop that in Westfield and Oxford Street. They will run the shop when they come out of prison as a reform project. They'll have full-time jobs, so a bit more stability. And that's what I'm creating. So yeah, we just need as much help as we can get from everyone, really. You know, whether that's volunteering, donating, you know, buying the clothes, it's all of that. And all the money goes back into the project because we want to launch all over the country. And by kind of year 3-4 of the business and the community interest company, I want kind of 80% of the business run by young people that have left prison or young people that have lived experiences. So there you go. I see it got me going now. So yeah, jack of all trades, but the business, this is my passion now. But I'll always still do journalism and follow the Kaba story. That is, I promised the family I will do that, and I will do that.
Thank you so much, Greg. And it'll be great to interview you in about 7 months from now to see how your business is going.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'll have lost all my hair by then and probably turned grey. But no, it's great. I love it. Absolutely love it. It's the best thing. Well, I don't want to say that because that jeopardizes it. I don't want to use that term yet, but I'm happy. All right, Michael. Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All right. You look after yourself.
So as you know, this is the Inside Out clothing project, and it's the first time it's ever happened, and you guys are going to be the pioneers really for this project.
The program's based around prisoners coming out and doing something positive in the community. Putting together a clothing line, make the clothes, learning how to sell the clothes, and then ultimately have a pop-up shop.
I had no intentions on doing anything to do with like fashion or anything like that, but the opportunity came and you know, I took it.
Like you guys already said, second chance, inside and out, changing your life around.
You want it bigger, smaller, yeah?
This could be life-changing, innit? All I say is opportunity for something different. So
I'm meeting great people like yourself. Networking is important, but I've never knew where to start.
But you guys have a story to tell. What do you really care about? What drives you?
Ever since I was a youngin', I put my mum through hell. So I came out of jail, I went lidge, got myself a job, and the first paycheck I got, I spent it right on my mum.
I don't think many first projects have a store this big.
No, a whole
way,
shop.
Yeah.
I'm most looking forward to the photo shoot and then obviously the store days where we actually get to sell the garments. I do feel really positive about the future. I'm feeling really optimistic, like the journey that I'm on now, doing something I actually enjoy doing as opposed to working jobs just to earn a bit of cash to just survive.
You know, be in a position one day where I can tell people, like, look how far I've come and look where I came from. That's the main aim. I'm just trying to make my family proud at the end of the day.